Hey guys, you are listening to the Unruly Doctor podcast, a podcast about life, metaphysics, current events, politics, and anything I find interesting. Please subscribe to our channel and like this episode so that we can grow and reach a bigger audience. Enjoy the episode. Hey guys, episode 19. We're in the house. Ready to record another episode. I gotta get more consistent, man. I tell you what, I am definitely all over the place half the time. So, and I'm back. Yeah, it's sometimes it's tough for me to try to stay, as consistent as I need to when I'm working so much, and I'm working on the trailer and things like that, right? So, I'm gonna get there. I'm working slowly but surely. There's going to come a day where this is going to be a full-time gig and, all the universe is going to make it happen. And, along with my hard work and stuff like that. So, it's one step at a time. We're getting there, piece by piece. So, in this week's episode, there's been a lot of things, happening overall in the world, in the clinic, in my life. Right. So it's like trailer update, so the trailer's getting a little closer, right? New contractor. So last contractor, unfortunately, I had, tried to basically take my money and run. And so I had to chase him down. Finally got my money back somewhat of what was not paid for sure. And then just kind of taken and ran with. So we at least got that money back. Right. So that was good. Got a new contractor. He seems to be working, which is good. It's pretty crazy to think about how, these days it's like people not wanting to work or their standards of, what is good work has really taken a heavy dip. So, I'm hoping that, I'll have a place to live and I'm hoping in less than a month. I mean, good Lord, it's freaking crazy. I've been homeless this long at this point. But hey, you know what? My personality is I get in, I get it done. I'm not afraid to take risks, and sometimes that fully pays off, sometimes it doesn't. It's going to pay off in the long run, so everything's going to be cool there. And the next update is today I fly out actually, so I'm actually recording this episode before I hit the plane. I'll be flying out to Chicago. I'll be out there for a week for a mini vacation, and I finally decided, it's time to start traveling and doing, that type of thing. I want to travel. I want to start seeing the world. I want to start talking to, interesting folks. And, eventually I'd like to actually set it up where, I'm interviewing different healers and stuff, traditional healers and things that, I'm interested in. I'm interested in seeing, gurus or ancient healers, Ayurvedic healers, and, jungle healers and all that type of cool stuff. I forgot the one in Mexico is called. I think they're called, oh boy, I don't know. But there's specific healers in Mexico that have a name and stuff like that are, different and interesting. And so I think someday here I'm going to be able to interview those people and talk to them and that's kind of the stuff that's in the pipeline as time's going on, and hopefully soon I'll be able to record in different places too. So I just got some new podcast equipment that is mobile, so I can take those things and I can bring them with me over to wherever I want. So I've got mobile podcast equipment coming where I'll be able to record anywhere I want to record a podcast with very minimal dragging things around. So I'll have my kind of jungle recording kit, which will be really, that'll be exciting to bring around. So in terms of current events and stuff, I mean, obviously as I'm hitting puberty here, obviously there's been some events that have happened recently, right? So speaking of Chicago, right, I'm on my way to Chicago. There's a mass shooting there, and it really does kind of boil down to what we talked about a couple episodes, right? There's a lot of factors that go into that, and once again, media is focusing, of course, on the fact that we got to just get rid of guns. We just got to get rid of guns. It's It ain't going to solve nothing. You can get as many guns out as you want, take them away from every citizen you want, and the bad people will always have guns. So, all you'll do is disarm the folks that probably actually need them, and I'm not a fan of guns, to be honest with you. But unfortunately, as of the state of the world currently, there's too many people who, unfortunately, they don't respect life. They don't respect guns. They don't respect a lot of things. And I think there's a lot of really bizarre, what's the term I'm looking for? There's a really bizarre dichotomy in people's minds right now where it's like they hold one opinion, but they don't see the irony of holding that opinion when they talk about something else, and how it's like they have it for a certain thing, and then they're trying to not apply it to another thing. You know what I mean? Like I was watching there's an interesting YouTube channel, and I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but essentially what he is he's like an epidemiologist, statistics guy. And, he goes to college campuses or different places, and he basically has a question, so the one I was watching is he had the question, my body, my choice, vaccines and abortion. And then he puts it on a scale, and it's, neutrals in the middle. And then there's agree, or there's slightly agree, and strongly agree. And then there's the same in the disagree category. And then he kind of goes 1, 2, 3, go, and he lets everybody pick their categories. And then he kind of picks apart why do they fall where they're falling on the category. And there's a really interesting moment in this, abortion and vaccine, my body, my choice thing, where there was people who were in the category of, strongly disagree. And he was like, well, why is that? And they were talking about, well, a vaccine affects everybody. So, you not getting vaccinated is going to potentially, alarm, is going to potentially hurt other people, and, could affect my health and this and that, irregardless of your risk to that, and then he was talking about and then on the abortion side, it's like, one of the participants was saying, well, it's, I understand where it's her body, and, if the child is, I mean, they're saying some pretty crazy things, man. Like, well, if the child's inconvenient and this and that, she can have the right to basically kill it. And, and it's like, what's crazy to me is like people these days don't see how they're literally just like, how they'll apply logic on one end, and they're totally like the same, somewhere where it's obviously exactly the same, applicably, they try to like separate it. And then they cause he was like talking about how, well, I mean, this guy was essentially saying, you could affect my life and I could die. And then, the guy intelligently points out, well, yeah, but aren't you killing a life, because it's inconvenient or potential to affect this person's life? And, that kind of got this guy pretty stuck in a pickle, as I would imagine it would, because that logic doesn't make any sense at all. Saying, for example, my body, my choice for abortion, but not for vaccines, right? It's an obvious parallel, for anyone who just does basic thinking about it. Basic critical thinking is a very similar dichotomy, it's you can't have one without the other. And, but that's what's happening these days in a lot of people's, political opinions about life, things like that, is they're trying to like magically, have these opinions, that are, that they're trying to pick and choose and twist things. And even though then that opinion is in total opposition to another category, that's pretty much the same, very much the same in the logic train there, they then try to twist it and say, well, there's this, and, they're trying to convolute it when it's pretty obvious, and I think that does tie in a lot too with the gun thing as well, because there's also a lot of twists of opinion there going on, right? And the Chicago thing and all the other things that have been going on, right? where people are like, well, we got to get rid of all these guns. We got to disarm people. And then the same people are like, well, we got to send guns to Ukraine. We got to give all these guns to kids and moms and dads and we got to let those people defend themselves and from an opposing government. And then, it's like those same people are like, well, but you can't have guns to protect yourself from your own government. And that's like, or those same people, it's, somebody's got a knife and they're chasing you and I bet you wish you had a gun then, those are the same people who are like, well, we'll talk to them. I'll give them the wallet. Sometimes they don't want your wallet. Sometimes they want to kill you. What are you going to do? Nothing. You're going to let them kill you, I guess. I don't know. I mean, there's a real sad thing going on in human intellect. Not at all bragging about my own intellect. I at least know I'm a critical thinker. I'm open to changing my opinions. I'm open to listening to opposing opinions. And I am willing to admit when I'm wrong. I don't think that's the case for a lot of people now. I mean, a lot of people don't ever admit they're wrong. Two, are not open to changing their opinions. The YouTube channel I'm talking about, he does a great job of showing how people are not willing to change their opinions, even if presented more information or evidence, will still not change their opinions because they're so ingrained in that opinion and the, social, I don't even know what you'd call it, the social embarrassment of being wrong, or I don't know. These are folks who they're unable to admit that they may have made a mistake. Another example of this recently too, right? The overturning of Roe v. Wade. A lot of people are up in arms about that, and a lot of people don't even understand what that even means. I can't believe how many times I hear people saying, well, that's, a reversal of all abortion. And it's not. It just puts it back to the states, which is the way it was always supposed to be. The Roe v. Wade's original decision should have never been put forth in the first place because there is no constitutional right to kill somebody in the Constitution, which the Supreme Court's real only job is to interpret the Constitution and uphold its law. So all these folks who are saying, 2 years ago, people in this country couldn't stop praising the Supreme Court for certain decisions, right? And now they're like, oh, well, the Supreme Court it's too much power. We have to put more people on it. We have to take the other two branches and balance the power scale and reverse this thing. And guys, it should have never been passed in the first place. It was always supposed to go to it was always a decision of the states. So if you live in a state currently that is very on the pro side of that, it's not going to change at all for you. Zero change. If you live in a state that is probably more conservative, it probably will change, but it will become more conservative. It doesn't mean that it will be completely outlawed. I don't think a lot of people understand that when you start doing your research on, well, what's the world's typical policies on abortion, that we're actually on not even the little extreme, we're on the far extreme. We're one of the only countries in the entire world that would do an abortion 8 months in, 9 months in somewhere. That's a grown fetus, and people are convoluting the fact that, well, you should still have the choice up to 8-9 months or whatever and things like that. We have so much information on biology and the growth of fetus and the cycles of life for that. And, now with modern technology, we can see them smiling earlier than we thought was possible, sucking their thumbs earlier than we thought possible. It's all of these things, right? So you can't continue to have laws that are so cruel and are murder, in a certain level, right? So I think where most people are wanting to meet in the middle on this topic is really, I don't think a lot of people understand Roe v. Wade. Two, I don't think people actually know the birth cycle. I don't think they know the reproductive birth cycle of fetus growth from, day 1 to 9 months. They don't know that. So when someone says, well, we're going to take it all, they're going to take it away. People get all up in arms, right? Or if somebody wants to restrict it, who is more aware of fetal development, and the timeline. Well, yeah, we can't restrict it. And there's a lot of strange talking points on that subject too. I've learned as I listen, because I listen to all the sides, and I kind of see, well, who's got the best, most intelligent, points. And on this topic, a lot of people are just saying some really ridiculous stuff. Honestly, in that topic alone, people just, they don't, you go talk to folks and you're like, okay, well, why do you think, what's the difference between the third try and the second try? I don't know. What's the difference between the second try and the first try? I don't know. Well, if you don't know, then why do you think it's okay to go all the way to this timeline? What's the difference between the end of the second try and 1 day into the third? What's the difference between 1 day before birth and the next day? Because I was seeing, on some of the videos I watch when people are getting interviewed on this stuff and their opinions on it, there's some very disturbing things that people's logic is somehow leading them to, where like people are still thinking it's okay, for example, to have an abortion 1 day before birth. That's, and they think it's justified, and then they usually will cite something like a rape or an incestual thing. I'm like, guys, that is on such a small scale. They're taking the most extreme example that almost never happens, and they're applying it to the entirety of everything, and, when you look at places like Europe and other places, the longest most European countries will go is 15 weeks into a pregnancy, and we're blowing way past that, so most European countries and other places in the world are like 12 to 15 weeks, which I think is more than reasonable. I still think even 15 weeks is very much pushing it. Of course there's always a gray area where, yes, in the extreme example of a fetus is going to kill the mother, then, there's a debate, I think, to be had there. But once again, and that is an extreme case, very rare, especially, in the modern era compared to, medieval times, right? So it's that comparison that people keep making of, well, women are dying left and right because they're rearing children. It's just not true in the modern era. We have the lowest numbers, compared to thousands of years ago. We've got the best, fetal care, beginning of life we've had in history. Now, I don't agree with everything we do with fetal care in the current times, right? I don't think it's healthy to inject a bunch of drugs into a baby the second it's out of the womb. I don't think that having a birth laying backwards on a table that closes the pelvic floor is a intelligent way to have a birth versus standing and squatting, which is why for thousands of years we've done it standing and squatting. So I don't agree with everything we're doing in terms of birth and things like that. I don't believe that having C-sections just because the baby's a couple hours late means we should just C-section right away, or because because we're uncomfortable doesn't mean we just C-section right away, because the C-section comes with a lot of long-term chronic health effects on the fetus and the mother versus natural birth. So, just because I don't agree with everything there doesn't mean that we're still not in a much better place overall in terms of that category from very, very long periods of time ago, where still, even then, the survival rate of mothers was still pretty high from the birthing process. Now, even higher than that. So, and there's so many options as well for, if somebody doesn't want to keep their child, there are many options available and resources available to people. And there's plenty of people who would love a child that you could, that they would take off of you if you felt that need. So, there's a lot of really, I think, incredibly, I don't even know what the word would be. There's just very strange things that are going on in people's minds. And I think there's a lot of triggers that are kind of causing a lot of it, and I think a lot of it started, I mean, this has been going on a long time, but I think it's just been like particularly highlighted in the last couple of years because all the fear mongering that happened in the last couple of years, right? Freaking all these people out, making them mask up, vax up, it's like test up. I was just rereading one of my books I bought from Robert Kennedy Jr. in Children's Health Defense on, like the stats on like PCR COVID tests and stuff and how insanely and ridiculously inaccurate they are and were because of how many magnification cycles that they did, right? Like once you go past, I think it's 35 cycles, there's a 97% false positive rate on a PCR test once you go past 35 magnifications. And during the last 2 years, the magnifications from the CDC, where I believe the recommendation was 35 to 40 magnifications, meaning that the CDC purposefully created 97% false positive rate on PCR tests. So, let that one sink in for you. Just an opinion, by the way, YouTube. Just an opinion. Just reading stats. I'm just reading stats. Take it up with the statistics. Take it up with stats. So all these people think they're dying of it. All these people, blah, 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 blah. So, that freaks all these people out. And these people get more and more freaked out and more trusting of government and And so now, when the government says we need to get rid of guns, people are like, we need to get rid of guns. When the government's telling people they're taking away your abortion rights, they're taking away my abortion rights. And, they're coming after, your LGBTQ children. They're coming after my LGBTQ children. We all have to freak out. And that's what's happening. And these people just are quick to fire, and they're not using their brain. They're not using their noggins. They're just immediately gut-wrenchingly going right into their feelings instead of using any logic at all about what they're saying, what they're doing. They're not looking into anything. They're not asking any questions. They're not listening to opposing opinions. And that's a really scary thing because many times in history when people aren't thinking about things, they're not using their noggin, they're in high fear states, bad things always happen. When people are in high fear states, they're not thinking logically. You've got a massively powerful government entity telling you what to do. People will fall in line like nobody's business. And, mark my words, man, there's some crazy things that are coming down the pipeline. And I'm really hoping that people get it together. I hope people wake up on a bigger and grander scale because I don't think there's going to be much time left for people like myself to be able to speak freely and to open the minds of people who may be lost and not asking questions, lost and confused. There's a lot of that going on. The newest generation especially doesn't think at all. They just like blindly accept, which is really scary because, once the new generation takes over and all of this programming, there's no other way to describe what's happened to these kids. They've been programmed to be highly emotional, non-logical, non-questioning, exceedingly opinionated and unwilling to change. And unfortunately, also entitled and lazy and a lot of things too. Now there's other factors about why that's happening as well. I'm not going to blame entirely government and education. I think parents still hold responsibility because I've got kids in the clinic who aren't like that at all. And that's purely because they've got good parenting. So it still boils down to good and bad parenting. You can't rule that out, because I've got plenty of examples of kids who are still got their heads on right, still got their heads on a swivel. They're very critical thinking. They question things. They don't immediately blindly accept. They see BS and they see through it. It's just unfortunate that there's a huge subset of kids where that's just not the case at all. And unfortunately, sometimes their parents don't either. So it's like you just have a whole echo chamber in your household of totally no dissenting opinion at all. And I think so many of these new people are afraid to even have a debate. They're so socially triggered that even if you just have an opposing opinion, they take that as a personal attack. I hear the word assault all the time, and it's like, you hear the word assault so much now, it has no meaning anymore. It's like, you assaulted me with your words. No, I didn't. Nobody did. It's, you have to, in order to create true like hurt and, sadness and things like that, you're still the one who has to self-generate the feelings, with your perception of things, so, I mean, it's like, how do we fix that? How do we reach these people better? I think like number one, for sure, because this is a criticism of people on the other side of the aisle here is, a lot of times people on the other side of the aisle attack these people and, are condescending to these people. We can't deny that. I watch videos and I see the interviews, I see the talks and things like that. And I do like get the sense that they're being condescending when they ask questions and stuff. Because they are like, well, what this person's opinions are completely ridiculous and no. And I get it. I agree. I don't think these opinions are good opinions. But I think a lot of times the reason the discussion can't happen is because, people on the other side of the aisle, when they talk to these people, they do get a little too condescending many times, which makes these people who are already highly emotional, very easily triggered. It triggers them worse. So, on the criticism side of things, I do think that is a big component of the whole thing. So I think that's one way to change the dialogue, is not being so confrontational, pointing fingers and saying what bad people these people are. 'Cause that doesn't get anybody to change an opinion. It really doesn't. I mean, I would never change my opinion if somebody just comes up to me and says what a crappy person I am, because what that immediately logically makes you do is do the exact opposite. It makes you ingrain into your opinions and defend them stronger, versus just saying, hey, well, why do you think that? Well, have you ever read this? What do you think about this? Well, I haven't read that. Oh, well, here it is. Take it home with you, read it, see what you think. I mean, that's how you change people's opinions. That's how I've always changed people's opinions. I'm in a profession where every day, all I do every day is have to change opinions, because, you're constantly in my profession bombarded with critics all the time, far more so than I could argue almost any other health profession. Chiropractic is definitely at the top of the most criticized professions in existence in healthcare, for sure. And that's just because we've always been against the grain of medicine. So we've never been pill pushers, so, and obviously if you push pills, and somebody's like, I'm not a pill pusher, then there's obviously a friction there. And, because it's basically, it's an argument of what is a better healthcare system, natural or synthetic, right? So, so my entire job is having to change opinions of people, and that's people in all sorts of walks of life. I'm changing the opinions of the local mechanic. I'm changing the opinions of a medical doctor down the road. I'm changing the opinions of, a nutritionist or, a white collar job individual, a real estate agent or whatever. I mean, so kind of being a professional opinion changer, I guess, is honestly what you could probably call half my job. I've just noticed over the years of having to change many, many, many opinions about things. The best way to do it is just to present information, especially factual information, prove what you're saying, because many times the proof speaks volumes, far more so than when you're trying to just shove it down someone's throat. Now that tactic doesn't always work, right? So it's like, in terms of like, last couple of years, there's been a lot of like the George Floyd thing was a big thing. And a lot of people were like, talking about how people of color are, killed all the time by white people and stuff like that. And even though you could bring out as many statistics as you wanted, proving actually it was the opposite. More white people are killed, unfortunately, by people of color every year, in far more higher numbers, and more people of color are killed far more by other people of color, right? That's the actual statistics. So even when presenting like actual facts, people will still continue to many times completely ignore it because they're so ingrained in their opinion that they're totally unwilling to hear even factual information, like actual factual information. So that's not always the best way, but I'd argue it's at least probably one of the best ways to change the most opinions is to gently and very nicely present an opposing side of things by just presenting factual information. It's the same thing with gun laws. It's the same thing with abortion. It's the same thing with, all these things. It's just presenting actual factual information along with solutions and compromise. It's really how you change opinions. So it's all tying in together. The mass shootings with gun law stuff, the Roe v. Wade situation, the vaccines. This is an interesting period in human history where there's a real big chunk of people standing up for what they believe in on both sides of all these things. And, in the past, that would have been just a time for debate. People would have debated. Now it's like people are arguing and just, ripping on each other all the time, which I don't really feel is helpful. I really don't think it's working that well. Because once again, it's really just about having intellectual, intelligent debate and finding where does the common ground lie. That's how you come together on issues, because for example, on, abortion, things like that, right? Roe v. Wade. I think there's definitely a middle ground that could be had there. I think there's a strong argument for the heartbeat bills. I think there's a strong argument somewhere between 6 to 12 week mark, where I think most Americans, once understanding fetal development, would probably agree that somewhere in a 6 to 12 week range is where you would call it at the latest. And so especially now with all the testing we have, how much more accurate our testing is, how much more rapid our testing is, how widespread our testing is for if you're pregnant. I mean, you can go to 24-hour CVS, you could know that day, that quick, boom. Don't even have to make a doctor's appointment. You can just go to CVS, boom, buy it, go home, done. Buy 3-4 of them. You have 2 or 3 of them all come up positive, you know. And you can detect it so early now. So, or if we even went to, say, France's, I believe France's is 15 weeks is the latest abortion you can have. At 15 weeks, guys, if you don't know you're pregnant over 3 months into it, come on. You're a third of the way through your pregnancy. You have no idea. In the vast majority of cases, there's just no way. The vast majority of cases, there's no way. You won't have had a period for so long. There's, you're going to have noticed the weight gain, the tenderness in the breasts, the large breasts, the enlarging of the breast. That's very basic, fetal development, and I think unfortunately these days, right, I'm sure at some point I'll get flack because, I'm a man and people are going to say, well, you don't have a right to talk about that. Well, somebody's got to be able to talk. I mean, we all have to be able to talk about these things because we're all humans, And that, even that highlights an entirely another, set of issues, right? Because people are like, well, you're a man, you can't talk about it. But those same people, it's like, well, how do you know I'm a man? And unfortunately, then they got to go walk circles around because because this is the year of we don't know what a woman is or we don't know what a man is. So, anybody on a certain opinion set who comes at me for that and says, well, you can't have this opinion on birth because you're a man. Well, according to what many people now believe, men can get pregnant. So, it's, once again, you can't have both. And that's a lot of what's happening right now is you can't have this opinion and have this opinion at the same time. And a lot of people are struggling with that because it is not possible to say men can get pregnant and then at the same time come at me and say, I can't have an opinion on this because I'm a man, when you clearly aren't able to define what a man is. So, that's a perfect example of how people's logical minds are not functioning properly currently. They can't even see the irony in what they're saying, and how it makes absolutely no sense how they hold this opinion, then try to do this different opinion here, and they're in total conflict. Like it's not even. It's like, and they can't even see it, which is crazy. Or if they do see it, then they kind of curl up in a ball and they run away because they know that they're about to look really bad because of, how opposing their opinions are. I may not always get my opinions right, but at least I'm consistent. So I'm not perfect, but at least I'm consistent. So if I'm wrong, at least I'm consistently wrong. It's the solution once again really is we have to come together on these things, educate ourselves, come with information, right? So, it's like when people were talking about, how there's a lot of fake stuff going on in COVID, right? And, what was fake? Well, you can't just scream it's fake and then have nothing to back it up because that makes you look stupid, even though you might be right. Versus like a second ago, right? You go read some things on PCR testing accuracy and you can justifiably prove there was fraud going on with PCR testing and creating false positives at a ridiculously high rate. And how the policies set magically changed, right? For example, on PCR testing, right after Joe Biden got into office, magically the CDC, WHO, and the people who set the standards for PCR testing magnification magically brought it down below 35 cycles. And then, of course, what happened? You saw a gigantic drop in positive cases. And then they said, well, it's because Joe Biden put more masks on people. He vaccinated more people. I disagree. I think it's just because you changed the PCR testing criteria. You took it from a high false positive rate, which you knew would be the case at over 35 cycles, well known in PCR testing. Also, the founder of PCR testing said you should never use this for clinical diagnosis, even though that's what every country's done. And then on top of that, this new guy gets in office and you just change the definition. You say, hey, guys, recommendation, we're going to change it, take it below 35 cycles, which would give you an exceedingly lower number of cases. And it did. So, and that's not the first time, by the way, they've employed that strategy. Our government has employed that strategy before with smallpox, but that's another thing. And polio. Those are two other cases where they did that exact same strategy, where they were just diagnosing things differently. And then once, certain things came out, they just started re-diagnosing these things into different categories. So, another topic, another time. So I think that's a great way great place to pause the episode, guys. I know it can be tough listening when it's only one person and not two. So have a great day, guys. Thanks for listening to the podcast. Please like and share. Send this to your friends. We really want to grow. I want to get bigger. I want this to get huge. All right, guys. Thank you.